Greetings, Jelly Spoons, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where I talk about anything and everything. And this week, because last week, it was Shakespeare Day, aka Shakespeare's birthday, the day we celebrate Shakespeare. I dressed up as Ariel from The Tempest. It was a grand old time. So anyway, because last week was Shakespeare Day, I've decided to stick with the theme, and today's Monday Madness is all about Shakespeare. Well, all about. It's also sort of about D&D. If you've seen the title of this video, then you won't need me to explain, but let me carry on anyway. So, today we are going to be taking 3 characters from one of my favourite Shakespeare plays, A Midsummer Nights Dream, and I'm going to be turning them into D&D characters. Feel free to use them in your own D&D games if you want, and I fully expect this has been done before, possibly better by other people, but I wanted something fun and whimsical to do as ever, so here we go. Alright, so the 3 characters we're going to be using are Puck, Titania, and Oberon. We're going to be turning them into D&D characters. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'm going to leave that up to you if you want to use them, so you can pick what spells and abilities they get. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give them each 4 things, so I'm going to pick their alignment, their race, their class, and their background. Alright, let's dive into it, and I kind of want to leave my favourite for last, so let's start with Oberon. Look at me, I even brought notes. So, Oberon! He is the king of the fairies. He is vastly powerful, a little bit stubborn, quite prone to having, I'm going to say temper tantrums, but it does depend on the actor playing him at the time. He has lots of long speeches, although so does everyone in Shakespeare. So I'm going to say that he's quite thoughtful and creative, a very deep thinker. He definitely has that creative imagination, partly because he has the power to back it up. You know, he is a very powerful fairy fae being. He is king of fairies, and therefore he has a lot of power to go with it. But just because you have lots of power doesn't mean that you automatically know how to use it. So he has definitely lived for a long enough time, been experienced enough with the world to know, oh, I'm going to use this power to do this. So he remembers that flower that he had seen and the stories he's heard. He sends Puck off to go and get it. He plans to then use this on Titania. So he's quite cunning as well. So he has creativity and cunning along with his power and thoughtfulness and just general sense of, well, a little bit egotistical and evil, I suppose. Yeah, his alignment. I'm wavering on that one. Let's start with his race then. So Oberon's race, now it would be very, very easy to just make all of these characters fairies because that's what they're described as in the play. But I just wanted to be more creative than that because while they are described as fairies, the idea of what fairy is, it is so vast and it can mean so many different things to so many different people. I mean, you've got fairies like Tinkerbell from Peter Pan, hint hint, I have Peter Pan lore on my other channel, versus a character like Oberon and Titania and Puck. And while they have a similar sort of mischievous side and a hint of danger and that kind of thing, also Tinkerbell is, you know, the size of your hand and tiny with wings, and that's not how the fairies in A Midsummer Night's Dream are described. Now, yes, they probably can change, especially Puck can change in shape and size. Tinkerbell can't though, she is always going to be that size, but the fairies in A Midsummer Night's Dream obviously have very different powers. Now again, there are different power levels, just to stop making this sound like a game. There are different power levels, whereas Tinkerbell is a commoner fairy who can mend the pots and kettles. Oberon and Titania are, you know, king and queen, and Puck clearly has a lot of power as well. So they are sort of different types of fairies, if you see what I mean. So none of them, spoiler alert, are going to be a fairy in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. So for Oberon, I went back and forth between a few of them, but I eventually went for a race that I've actually played before and very much enjoyed, which is the Eladrin Elf. Let me read you the description. So, Eladrin are technically a sub-race of elves, but anyway, Eladrin are elves of the Feywild, a realm of perilous beauty and boundless magic. That immediately to me struck as very Oberon. He has powerful, boundless magic, and depending on which version you're watching, I guess, he can be very, very beautiful. You could describe him like that. Eladrin can step from one place to another in the blink of an eye. Each Eladrin resonates with emotions captured in the Feywild in the form of seasons. So, this to me reads as Oberon's emotions being a little too over-emotional. He doesn't seem to have a very good grasp on his emotions. He gets very, you know, temper tantrumy with Titania, and he demands a child that she has because her friend died. Not good. So he definitely has issues with at least anger management, so that felt like it definitely worked. He's definitely stuck in his angry boy season, something like that. So an Eldrin season can change, and some remain in one season forever. There we go. So over the course of the show, his season, his emotions do change, and that definitely could be something that you lent into if you were playing in the game. And in the original story, so in A Midsummer Night's Dream, he definitely is in his angy boy season a lot of the time, and then his cunning boy but still angy season. By the end, he seems to have calmed down a little bit. Autumn is peace and goodwill, winter is contemplation, and spring is cheerfulness, summer is boldness and aggression. There we go! Boy is in his summer era. Now let's move on to... wait, we've done his race. Let's do class. Class next. So what is Oberon's Oberon's class. So for Oberon's class, I was going back and forth for a very, very long time between two, and I was torn between Sorcerer and Artificer, or Artificer, depending on how you say it. I've said it many different ways over my life, and many people say it many different ways. Anyway, eventually I went with Artificer and Artificer. That is because I feel that he has more of a creative brain than just using his magic. For example, he does use his magical powers. He can turn himself invisible to watch the lovers, that kind of thing, but he sends Puck to get things rather than casting some sort of magic spell himself. He wants the physical flower, that kind of thing. So while 100% I would argue he could be a sorcerer, and absolutely you could play him like that, personally I'm going to lean into his creativity and maybe an outlet for his aggression as well, and I'm going to go with Artificer, or Artificer, whatever you would like to say. So Artificer, just to read about it, so masters of invention, use ingenuity and magic, and again magic, so he still gets to use the magic, to unlock extraordinary capabilities in objects. They see magic as a complex system waiting to be decoded and then harnessed in their spells and inventions. So again, he does use magic in the things that he's creating. He doesn't necessarily want to create trinkets and mortal things. He creates with magic. He uses that magical flower, a means to its end, that kind of thing. I can see him using more magical artifacts from around the world, or drawing on his own magic to enchant something, that kind of thing. I definitely see that for him rather than making just mortal objects. Artificers use a variety of tools to channel their arcane power, casting a spell, using alchemist supplies, potent elixir. Yeah, exactly. I definitely think that this could be very Oberon. Again, though, you could do him as a plain sorcerer. Absolutely you could. But I'm going to lean just a little bit into this one as well. So personally, I think he is just a tiny little bit Artificer because I like him for being creative boy. So Oberon is going to be a Eladrin Artificer. All right, then let's do what's left. Alignment and background. Alignment was tricky, so let's do background first. So for Oberon's background, again, I was between a few, but ultimately I have gone for Sage. And this is because, well, let me just read about Sage and then I'll explain my train of thoughts. So, you spent years learning the lore of the multiverse. You scoured manuscripts, studied scrolls, listened to the greatest experts on the subjects that interest you. Your efforts have made you a master in your fields of study. Skill proficiencies, arcana and history, languages of your choice, equipment, that kind of thing. And this is why I chose Sage. So, in one of his very famous speeches, Oberon is talking about, I know a bank where the wild thyme blows, and he gets very flowery, literal, well, he talks about a flower, but importantly, he remembers it. This wasn't a flower that he grows himself, it's not from his garden, it's not a flower he saw yesterday, it is a flower that has never come up before in the show. He remembers it from potentially many, many decades before, and he sends Puck to go and get it. This is part of his lore of the world. He is very well travelled, he has seen and experienced the world, he remembers it, that kind of thing. So that immediately led me towards Sage. I feel that he has travelled not just the Fey realm, but the mortal realm as well. He clearly has a lot of experience. At the end of the show, him and Titania and the other fairies go through the king's palace and they bless the house, that kind of thing. So there's already traditions and things that he does. He has apparently, you know, travelled enough to have a thing for and possibly with a member of the mortal world, and possibly several more, as Titania mentions at a certain point. So he is seasoned traveller, and I think definitely a background like Sage could suit him because it fits with he has studied the multiverse of the mortal world, the Fey world. He is probably ancient, a very old being, you know, he's a king of the fairies, probably been around for a very long time, and just that immediate learning and how he remembers the bank where the wild thyme grows, and he remembers all these bits of lore and information. So that is why I have chosen Sage. Finally then, his alignment. What alignment did we pick for Oberon? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. As ever, just let me know what you think. What would you pick for all these characters? So Oberon, I went back and forth because arguably some of his actions are not good, but I wouldn't say that overall he is evil. He is certainly not good though, and I think that he complies with laws of the world sometimes, but predominantly it's his own. So ultimately I've chosen for Oberon, the king of the fairies, to be lawful neutral. And this is because while he can lean into some evil things, part of that I think is just because of his rage and frustration and inability, you know, just to get the fuck over it. And I think that if he, towards the end of the show particularly, does start to get past that, then you can see it's not actually evil intent within him, it's, well, Maybe, but overall I think he's more of a neutral character. The lawfulness comes from himself. He is the king of the fairies. The laws that he is imposing that he thinks everyone else should adhere to, particularly involving himself, and sometimes he is not correct, but definitely I'm thinking lawful neutral. So, Oberon then, our first character from Shakespeare. Oberon, the king of the fairies, as a D&D character. He is an Eladrin elf, he is a sage, he is a artificer, and he is lawful neutral. All right, let's move on then to his wife, the queen of the fairies, Titania. How do we make her as a D&D character? So what do we know about Titania then? Well, she is, again, much like Oberon, very, very powerful, a hugely powerful fairy creature. She is the queen of the fairies, and this doesn't seem to be just because she married Oberon, the king of the fairies. She does seem to have power and might in her own right. She definitely seems to be a powerful force, particularly in personality. She holds her own against Oberon, who is essentially a sort of wall of thunder and lightning at points, and it feels very much like standing up to Zeus or Poseidon. You know, you have to have a real sense of personality to stand against that, and also they presumably did fall in love at one point, so they have to, you know, meld and mesh together, and I don't think a character like Oberon would have fallen in love with someone who was, what would he deem as, weaker or lesser than him. I think that he would fall in love with a bold badass, and most of the interpretations I've seen of Titania have played her that way, so I think she definitely is a strong badass character with power in her own way. It might not be the same type of power as Oberon, but she definitely still has power. She has traveled the world, she can move around with her fairies, that kind of thing. We also know that she's very loving, caring, and attentive to the people she cares about, her friends. One of her friends who died, who had a child, and she raises this child, immediately takes them in, and is perfectly willing to look after this child for the rest of their life because of how much she loved her friend and cared for her friend. So of course she's going to take in their child and care for him too. And that's a very sweet aspect of her character, especially considering how much she has to stand up against Oberon and all his absolute bullshittery because of having this child. I would have lost my crap with this guy many times, but she holds her own and manages to stay relatively calm until the moments where she storms off, but again, they're very justified. It also speaks to her morality as well, her sense of morality. Despite Oberon, this king of the fairies, and his lawful nature of, well, I want this, therefore I have, essentially grown-up toddler tantrum, she still stands there and goes, well, no, because I have this child from my friend, I'm going to raise this child, my friend is dead. No, you can't have him. And she even says lines like, not for thy fairy kingdom. So even if Oberon was offering her essentially the world, she wouldn't take it. So her sense of morality there, very strong, and her sense of loyalty as well. So powerful, very self-confident, very moral, and very caring person here. All right then, what is Titania's race? And no, I decided not to make her the same as Oberon because why not? I did still stick with elf in the end. I went back and forth a few times, but ultimately Oberon and Titania, they just, oh my goodness me, they really suit some of the elf things in D&D. So for Titania, I have made her an astral elf. Let me read to you about them and I think you'll understand why. So astral elves in D&D, this is 5th edition by the way, 5th edition. Long ago, groups of elves ventured from the Feywild to the astral plane to be closer to their gods. Life in the silver void has imbued their souls with a spark of divine light. Now, we don't really talk about gods in Midsummer Nights Dream, but Titania just, she feels like some sort of badass moon or sun goddess. You know what I mean? So that light manifests as a starry gleam in the astral elf's eyes. 100% I can imagine her with that. So, because nothing ages on the astral plane, astral elves who inhabit that plane can also be very old. Again, Titania has experienced a lot of the world, she knows a lot of things, and their longevity gives them an unusual perspective on the passage of time. Now, this could also speak to her levels of patience with a character like Oberon, because her perception of time might be that she just has existed for so long that this blip, this argument they're having, she has every faith that eventually it will blow over and he will get tired. Essentially, the toddler will scream himself out, we'll just wait him out, that kind of thing. So some are prone to melancholy while others display an absence of feeling. Many look for creativity and creative ways to occupy themselves. I can definitely see her indulging in some creative things, possibly even dabbling in the ways of mortals. We get hints of this in the way that she talks about her friend who was mortal, who had the child, who she would spend time with and she would talk with and they would explore, and I think she talks about like spices and ships and things like this. So haven't read this for a while, sorry, but that all indicates that she is a little bit more in touch with the mortal astral world in particular than, say, someone like Oberon. I feel that Oberon has passed through it, but sort of looks down on it a little bit more, whereas I feel like Titania is more engaging with it. So she could obviously have hobbies that are more Fae-like as well, but I also think that she would indulge a little bit and sort of explore the world of mortals, particularly as one of her best friends that she loved very much was one. Whether they choose to live in quiet contemplation or strike out and explore the far reaches of the multiverse, yeah, we all know which one Titania was. Astral elves tend to see things through the lens of time as having little or no meaning to them. Astral elves who don't dwell in the astral plane can live to be more than 750 years old. Goodness me, that will be quite a fun power dynamic if Titania is actually a lot older than Oberon. She talks about how they're essentially like gods and created things, so I think she'd be more than 750 years old. She talks about how we are their parents and original and stuff about like the seasons in the world and things like this. So I think they're both very, 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 very old, but I think it'll be really funny if Titania was just a couple of like centuries or a millennia older even than Oberon, because she comes from another completely different part of the Feywild, the Fey realm, the sort of astral plane, that kind of thing. And there's maybe a tiny bit of insecurity in him, you know, that sort of toddler toxic masculinity thing where Oberon feels like he has to constantly prove his power and be the more powerful one, because secretly he knows that Titania is actually older, more experienced, and probably more powerful than him in different ways. That'll be quite fun. So yeah, Titania is an astral elf. Now then, what is her class? When I read you the description of this class, I think you'll understand immediately why I went, yes, that is Titania. So, this, I won't tell you what it is, but you'll probably get it very quickly. So, whether calling on the elemental forces of nature or emulating the creatures of the animal world, this class are an embodiment of nature's resilience, cunning, and fury. They claim no mastery over nature, but see themselves as extensions of nature's indomitable will. Yeah, it's a druid. I had to pick this for Titania. As soon as I read it, I was looking into all the different classes, and as soon as I read this, I just went, that is her. Now, the cunning and the fury part, yes, is very Oberon. However, I think that Titania does lean into that as well, because she has to be quite cunning and quick-witted to get around Oberon and to stop him from getting the boy and to just argue back with him and stand up to him. And her fury is a very righteous fury as well when she's furious at him. But also there is the embodiment of nature's resilience. She is a very resilient character. You know, she has withstood her friend's death. She's looking after her friend's child. She is resilient against Oberon, against all of this stuff being brought down upon her. And even while she's under the love spell from the flower, she is still very resilient because she makes her fairies do what she wants. She is very commanding. She still holds that presence. And again, she's very resilient to just Oberon in general and his dumbassery. Sees themselves as extensions on nature's indomitable will, claim no mastery over nature. Now, I feel that this is very Titania as opposed to Oberon. And this is why Oberon couldn't be a druid, because while the cunning and the fury, yes, definitely leans into his personality, this certain aspect does not at all. Oberon, I think, sees himself as master over nature and all the things that he possibly helped to create or as a part of, whereas I think Titania sees herself as maybe, yes, the master and the original. We are their parents and their original, but she now sees herself as a part of it. I feel like she sees herself as a part of the world as opposed to I am the parent of the world and therefore I own it. I think she sees herself as more, I am the parent and I am responsible, especially with the child now, I am responsible as a part of this. Does that make sense? I hope so. All right, so let's move on then. So Titania is an astral elf and she is a druid, but what else is she? She needs a background and she needs an alignment. So let's do her background. So again, with Titania, much like with Oberon, I spent a very, very, very long time going through a lot of backgrounds and eventually I picked Outlander. So the description of Outlander is this. You grew up in the wilds far from civilization and the comforts of town and technology. You've witnessed the migration of herds longer than forests, survived weather more extreme than any city dweller could comprehend, and enjoyed the solitude of being the only thinking creature for miles in any direction. The wilds are in your blood, whether you are a nomad, an explorer, a recluse, a hunter-gatherer, or even a marauder. Even in places where you don't know the specific features of the terrain, you know the ways of the wild. And athletics and survival... Being able to survive Oberon, survival points up there. For her origin, you've got things like forester, trapper, homesteader, guide, exile, outcast, bounty hunter, pilgrim, tribal nomad, hunter-gatherer, and tribal marauder. I am leaning more toward a sort of guide for her because I feel that she she exudes that. So the reason I picked Outlander particularly for Titania is because of you grew up in the wilds far from civilization and the comforts of town and technology. And while, yes, you can argue that in modern day times she would have integrated with a little bit of modern technology because she would have been a part of the modern world, I also think that her natural state is foresty. That makes sense. So she comes from the astral plane. She has been in the astral plane, but her homestead, the place she feels most at home, is in the forests. And we can see this when she is going to sleep and her fairies sing her a little lullaby and they keep all the bad insects away from her, but they wrap her in flowers. She likes to be in nature. She sleeps, she feels at peace in nature. She feels comfortable and safe there, and that's where she wants to be. So that's something I definitely lent on for the Outlander for her, particularly with the whole growing up far away from civilization. You've witnessed migrations of herds longer than forests, and again, survived weather, Oberon, but survived all this stuff, weathered literally the world, has so much worldly experience. I think that's a big part of Titania's character, so I have given her Outlander. But what, finally, is her alignment? For Titania, I ultimately have gone for neutral good, because I think that she does have her tendencies, but unlike Oberon, I don't see her as doing anything particularly evil at all, and ultimately I do think that she is striving for good, not just in herself and in her friends, but in the world in general, and I think she's fairly neutral because she doesn't seem too chaotic with it. I also don't think she's very lawful, particularly not in the way that Oberon is lawful, particularly unto himself, and having existed alongside Oberon for so long, I think that seeing how he interprets being lawful, I think she'll have steered away from that. She has her own morality and her own ethics and values, but she definitely does not lean towards a lawful way of imposing it on other people like Oberon does. So that's why I've put her as neutral, but she is ultimately good, so neutral good. So to sum up then, Titania, the queen of the fairies, she is an astral elf, she is an outlander, she is a druid, and she is neutral good. And that leads us with our third and final character, who is my favourite character in all of Shakespeare. I do love Ariel, probably second best, and Mercutio and Tybalt I also really love, but this is my favourite character, Puck from A Midsummer Nights Dream. Let's attempt to make Puck as a D&D character. Puck's race was genuinely so hard. Originally, I was leaning towards Air Genasi, much like I did when I made Peter Pan as a D&D character, and for quite similar reasons actually, but ultimately, I decided to go with essentially a get out clause. I decided to essentially not have to make any decision at all, and so I have made Puck's race changeling. This is because we see and hear from him and others just how much he does. He changes his form all the time. He turns into a stool that maids sit on and then he makes them fall over. He turns into different creatures. He can at least imitate the voices of various different people. I imagine he can definitely make himself look like them as well. He is a trickster and a prankster, and altogether I just absolutely think that changeling fits him so very well. Also, listen to this. With ever-changing appearances, changelings reside in many societies undetected. Each changeling can supernaturally adopt any face they like. For some changelings, a new face is only a disguise. For other changelings, a new face may reveal an aspect of their soul. I don't think Puck's that deep with it sometimes, though. The first changelings in the multiverse appeared in the Feywild. Shocking. And the wondrous essence of that plane lingers in changelings today. Again, obviously. Even in those changelings who have never set foot in the Fey realm, absolutely not. Puck has been there. Puck is from there. Puck is one of the originals. Born and bred, Feywild, 1000%. Loves coming to the mortal world, fucking shit up and then going away. Also, headcanoning right now, Puck and Artigan / the Traveller from Critical Role, spoiler alert for Campaign 2, they are besties and have done many, many pranks together. Also, Puck and Jester would really get along. Each changeling decides how to use their shape-shifting ability, channeling either the peril or the joy of the Feywild, both. Sometimes they adopt new forms for the sake of mischief or malice. Other times they don a new identity to right wrongs or delight the downtrodden. I think Puck does every single one of those. In their true form, changelings appear faded, their features almost devoid of detail. It is rare to see a changeling in that form, for a typical changeling changes their shape the way others might change clothes. A casual shape, one created on the spur of the moment with no depth or history, is called a mask. A mask can be used to express a mood or to serve a specific purpose, and then might never be used again. However, many changelings develop identities that have more depth, crafting whole personas, complete with histories and beliefs. A changeling adventurer might have personas for many situations, including negotiation, investigation, and combat. Now, Puck 1000% does all of that, and that is why I have put him as a changeling. I also love the idea of the only person who's ever seen his true form is Oberon. Maybe that's how they first met, maybe he saw it over the years, maybe that's how Puck always appears to Oberon and then to everyone else he's all in a different shape, something like that. Also, I love the idea of Puck being played by many, many different people in a show, and every time he comes back it's a different person, and Oberon immediately recognises him because, well, he always bloody knows it's Puck. They all have the same shoes on or something that the audience can immediately twig, although they won't really need to. The same makeup, that's what I want. The same sort of Fae-like makeup, but they all look completely different. Oberon is the only person who immediately goes, yes, Puck, what do you want? Because he's been off, and while he's been off gallivanting, you know, he went off in one shape. Maybe he was a blonde 20-something-year-old woman when he went darting off to go and get the flower, and he comes back and he's like a 46-year-old man who looks like he's been driving a tractor. And we don't know why. For some reason, at some point, he changed. Maybe he saw this person, maybe he interacted with them, maybe he just did it for the lols. And at certain points, you have the same actor back again who has this sort of strange makeup on their face and just looks this unearthly ethereal, and that's Puck's true form, and that's the only person who's seen it is Oberon. Alright, so yeah, Puck is a changeling. Next, what is Puck's class? I did go back and forward a little bit, but ultimately I settled on my first choice, which was Bard. Now, more specifically, I'm going to get into that in a second, but just overall, I think Puck suits Bard because he is just, well, very entertaining, and also he seems to just live to create anarchy and chaos and mess, but you know, he can clean it up when told to. And so I think that leaning into the bard, the entertainer aspect of that, even just to himself, I think that he really harnesses that. And listen to what it says about bards in the D&D wiki. So, scholar or scoundrel? Obviously scoundrel. A bard weaves magic through words and music to inspire allies, demoralize foes, manipulate minds, create illusions, and even heal wounds. I mean, that basically just describes everything Puck does in the show. But that is not the only thing we have to do. With Bard, we also pick a college, and I was so torn. I was going between the College of Creation and the College of Eloquence for so long. But I have chosen the College of Eloquence, and this is why. Let me read to you. Adherents to the College of Eloquence master the art of the oratory. Persuasion is regarded as a high art, and a well-reasoned, well-spoken argument often proves more powerful than objective truth. Yeah, Puck leaning into story weaving rather than telling the truth? Absolutely. These bards wield a blend of logic and theatrical wordplay, winning over skeptics and detractors with logical arguments, and plucking at heartstrings to appeal to the emotions of the entire audience. Now, Puck does this a little bit at the end of the story. We quite literally hear him making a reasoned, rational argument, saying, if we've offended you, pretend it was a dream! It's all fine! And that just feels quite literally like a College of Eloquence bard. So we're definitely seeing that in Puck right there. Silver tongue, unsettling words. Yeah, this all just feels absolutely like something that Puck would do. Unfailing inspiration, universal speech, the ability to make your speech intelligible to any creature. Yeah, infectious inspiration. Just all of this feels so incredibly Puck-like. And yes, you definitely could go down College of Creation. In fact, quite a lot of the colleges would have suited Puck, depending on what you want to do with him. It's your character. If you decide to make him, do whatever you want. I personally, though, have chosen Eloquence because that final speech in particular that he gives, it just feels so much like this description. All right, so we have given Puck a race, we've given him a class. What is his background? Puck's background, I will admit, came to me quite quickly when I read it. But off the top of my head, I was finding it quite tricky. I was leaning into things like Sage, but I didn't want him to be exactly the same as Oberon. And also I didn't feel that he cared as much about learning in the same way that Oberon does. I feel like Oberon sort of views the world as almost a library to learn from and to remember, whereas Puck is sort of just traveling through it, experiencing things, picking them up, putting them down, picking them up, putting them down, letting them go, you know, and I think that he will sort of forget bits and pieces and remember things. He does remember where the flower is to go and get it for Oberon, but I do think that, you know, he might have had to have been reminded while Oberon was explaining to him, I know a bank where the wild thyme grows, where this, do you remember? Yeah? With this and this and this. Oh, yeah, right, that. Yes, totally remember that. In the end, I went for Puck's background as far traveller. And this does mean that he also has quite a lot in common with characters like Oberon and Titania as well. Almost all of the common people and other folk that one might encounter have one thing in common. They live out their lives without ever travelling more than a few miles from where they were born. You aren't one of those folk. You are from a distant place. The Fey Realm. One so remote that few of the common folk realise that it exists. The Fey Realm. And chances are good that even if some people you meet have heard of your homeland, they merely know the name and perhaps a few outrageous stories, all started by Puck, and probably true. You have come to this part of the world for your own reasons, which you may or may not choose to share. He's probably here because he's with Oberon. And although you will undoubtedly find some of this land's ways to be strange, you can also be sure that some things its people take for granted will be new to you and wonders that you've never laid eyes on before. By the same token, you are a person of interest, for good or for ill, to those around you almost anywhere you go. I mean, yeah. I think it's fairly obvious why I chose this one for Puck. I think it just suits him, particularly if we look through all the things that he does and says during the show. He is very interested in lots of different things. He likes to make at least himself laugh. The other fairies have heard of him, have almost been warned about him. They know stories. Are you not that shrewd, knavish sprite? Have you not done this? You frighten these people. You do all this stuff. And he's just there going, ha! Yeah, that was me. So I think that he definitely has a lot of stories about him and the homeland that he comes from as well. And I think he would love leaning into those outrageous stories. Definitely has told several of them, and a lot of them are probably true as well, even if he's over-embellished a tiny bit. So far traveller, absolutely 100%. I think that suits Puck down to a T. And what is his alignment then to finish him off? Well, I don't think I need to take a big long pause for this one. It's fairly obvious. It is the same alignment that I myself have, and I give every character I ever play. Chaotic neutral. Do I need to explain? Even if you know nothing about the show whatsoever, everything I've just told you about the character of Puck should leave this one, you know, fairly obvious. He is chaotic, but he is neither good nor evil. He is with Oberon, he serves the Fairy King, but he is not the same exact alignment as Oberon, his king. He does his own thing, he is chaotic. Even when he is sent to do his king's bidding, he still messes up and thinks it's hilarious when he does. He doesn't immediately start looking at the king and going, oh, I'm so sorry, and grovelling or anything. He thinks it's really funny when all the lovers are in a big mess, and Oberon has to tell him to fix it and tell him how to fix it, and it sort of ends up going a little bit further wrong, but ultimately he is just there for the vibes and the lols, and so yes, he is 1000% chaotic neutral. So to wrap it all up then, Puck from Midsummer Nights Dream, as created as a D&D 5th edition character, is his race is Changeling, his class is Bard from the College of Eloquence, his background is Far Traveller, and his alignment, of course, is chaotic neutral. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. How would you build Puck, Titania, and Oberon? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to play them, obviously take whatever I've done, play with them whatever you would like. And are there any other characters you would like to see me make in D&D? Because this could be quite a fun series, actually. Let me know in the comments down below. And I will see you very soon. I think on Friday I'm going to do an OC story. All right, I love you. Bye-bye!